want to talk just a little bit on the 18th Sunday of Ordinary Time, on the book of Ecclesiastes, but also on the Gospel. But I'm in Malta, so I just want to show you. Here's Malta. So, anyways, in the book of Ecclesiastes, what we have is the idea that this person Kohelet, traditionally known as Solomon, but anyways, it has that wisdom component and what is important on this earth in terms of wealth, in terms of prestige, in terms of property and ability to have more. All that is considered vanity. And so the interesting thing about the book of Ecclesiastes is that it says that basically everybody has the same fate. But it's during that period that's transitioning, as God is transitioning between that idea that everybody goes down into the pit, everybody goes down into the silence, transitioning to the idea of a final judgment. So we see kind of both, that that everybody shares the same fate, they all go down to the silent, but there also holds out that possibility of final judgment. And we think about wealth, we think about all of that, we think about not only in individuals' lives, but we also think about wars, insurrections, all these kind of things, all the violence that's caused because of wealth, greed, jealousy, all these kinds of things. In the gospel, what we have the person coming up to Jesus and says, help make my brother give me my share of the inheritance. And Jesus says, well, who made me your judge and arbiter? The one thing that's interesting is there's a website called The Craft of Preaching, and in The Craft of Preaching it talks about the fact that God himself, God the Father, was the one who made Jesus to judge and arbiter. Think about Matthew 25, separating out the sheep and the goats. So that's kind of a funny thought. But the one thing about it is that, again, that idea of wealth, and Jesus goes into the parable. And in the parable, you think about how many times the guy talks about himself. How many times does he talk about himself? So he says, what should I do? I do not have space to store my harvest. This is what I shall do. I shall tear down my barns and build larger ones. I shall store my grain and other goods, and I shall say to myself, as for you, you have so many good things for so many years. Eat, drink, and be merry. But the problem is that, again, it's not the fact that he has all these different goods, in building larger ones. But the problem is that he thinks solely about himself. How many times does he say I, my, and in talking to himself say you, but you actually referring to himself? How many times did he do that? How many times did he think about the fact that God has given him these blessings, that he's blessed and highly favored because he wants him to bless others, to help others in their need? We think about the fact that, like in the book of Genesis, Joseph built these large barns for grain because God had told him that the nations would be in need and they would be coming to Egypt. So think about the fact that, like just story of Joseph, that if we do have that money, if we do come into that inheritance, if we do come into a job that pays substantially more, helping and thinking about, okay, what can I do to bless others? And so thinking about being rich in God, and saying rich in God, really think about that idea of what sums up the gospel: to love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and your neighbor as yourself. So in loving God with all our heart, mind, soul, and strength, making sure to come to Mass, making sure to pray, making sure to know and to receive God's word, and helping us to use that word in our prayer, but also loving our neighbor as ourselves. And so it's thinking about the fact that we're called to be stewards and not to be selfish with the goods of this earth. Thanks. God bless.